speak Polish to you. It sounds extremely familiar because I speak Slovak. I was born in Žilina, just 3 hours from here. But I really don't know how to speak Polish. And I'm not going to give a talk in Slovak because you wouldn't understand it. So it's going to be in English. So first I want to thank you for coming. I understand that you have other options, and I appreciate that you decided that you want to come here and listen to my talk. I'm going to talk about software development at Google. Just a brief bio. I come, as I said, from Slovakia. I studied computer science in Slovakia, and then I transferred to Santa Clara University, where I got my degree in computer science and mathematics. And after 1 year of working for a startup, I joined Google, and that was back in 2005. So it's been 6.5 years. It's been a fun ride, and I can talk to you about it at the end if you have questions about Google. But today I'm going to talk to you about, first I'm going to start with the mission statement. You probably wonder why I'm even mentioning this, because it seems like it has nothing to do with the software development at Google. But it turns out that everything that Google does is towards a single goal, towards our mission. And this mission statement is something that every single software engineer or any other employee at Google needs to know by heart. Welcome. So if you wake me up at 4 a.m. and you ask me what the mission statement is, I'm going to say it without any mistake. Now that you learned about what Google is trying to do, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to talk about in the next hour. I've given this talk in Prague yesterday, and I was told that the first half was really easy to watch, and it was, you could not really have to pay a lot of attention, and it was still easy to follow. But the second half of the talk is going to be a lot heavy. So just relax for now, and then in the second half of the talk, pay a lot more attention because I'm going to get into a lot of details. At first, I'm just going to talk about the different roles and job titles that we have at Google. I'm going to talk about the teams and how they look like, how many people are in the teams, where we sit, what's the work environment. And then I'm going to move on to software development workflows that are used in the software industry. I'm going to give you an overview of 3 of these, and then I'm going to dive into talking about what Google specifically does on a day-to-day basis. So let's start with the teams. And if you have any questions, just lift your arm, and I will be asking questions to you, and I have some prizes to give out, so if you pay attention, you might be able to get some of this stuff. This is the most busiest slide in the whole presentation, so please bear with me. It describes some of the different roles we have in the engineering structure. These are the types of people that software engineers work with on a daily basis. You would have vice president of engineering, and then this person would then have multiple reports, usually directors of engineering or engineering managers. And director of engineering is a person that tends to be responsible for one large project, for example, for Gmail. They translate business needs into specific technical requirements. These people are highly technical. They are usually former engineers themselves. And regular software engineers, they tend to meet with the engineering director, not very frequently, but about once a quarter. Another role which you're probably familiar with is a product manager. You guys have product managers in many different kinds of companies, not only in software companies. So these people, again, surprisingly, are former engineers. Even though they do product management, we want to make sure that they do understand the technical side of things. And they tend to be very closely involved with the customers, with the users. They know what users need, or they think they know what users need. And their role is to listen to users, see what are the trends, and then have specific product ideas, and then translate this product vision into specific requirements that the product needs to have. Product managers tend to meet with engineering managers. Engineering manager is, again, surprise, a former engineer who happens to be managing people right now. It seems like there is 3 types of careers when you start at a software company. You start as an engineer, and then depending on what you really like doing, you end up either becoming a senior and then staff engineer and just continue staying in engineering, or you become a manager, or you go into project management. And now everything that you see below engineering manager are people who actually write software. So I'm going to skip over the TL and I'm going to jump into the SWE, software engineer. That's probably the most familiar to you, right? By the way, are you guys engineering students? Do you study engineering? No? Who does? What's your... Okay, about half. And the second half, what do you study?
Math teaching.
Math teaching? Oh, okay, education. But math, yeah, that has a lot to do with this. That's computer science?
Yeah.
Okay, so good crap. So software engineers are the developers, the people who actually write features. And these people write production code. So when you load Google, everything that, the whole code path that your query goes through is written by software engineers. They not only code, they're not just programmers, but they also design systems. They need to know how to design, how to architect software systems. So it's more than just a programmer. And the one above software engineer, the software engineer / TL, is a person who is software engineer, but at the same time is responsible for leading a small team. So for example, I'm a TL, but it doesn't mean that I don't get to code. I'm still coding a lot, but when another team needs to make an API between my team and their team's code, they usually come to me and we discuss what the API would look like. I basically try to free the people on my team of any meetings that they don't have to go to. PMs and tech leads should be spending some time in meetings. Developers, pure SWEs, should not have any meetings or should have very few meetings per week. And then we have SCT, which is a special role. It's software engineer in test. These are people who write code, but this code is usually testing frameworks that allow you to test the production code. For example, end-to-end tests, or tests that allow you to test or pretend that you are a user that's clicking on the UI, clicking buttons, expecting certain responses. So these people write these frameworks that allow you to write tests. And T is the last one, that's test engineer. And this person writes test cases. They use the thing that SET wrote to write the actual tests. All right. Here's an example of the hierarchy. It's known that Google has really flat hierarchy, and as you can see, most people are on the same level, on the software engineer level, and engineering manager tends to have 10 or up to 30 reports. So it's not like a very deeply nested tree. It's pretty flat. Sometimes you might have a software engineer that is not only TL, but also a manager. It's like 3 hats. You have to be writing the code, leading the team, and also managing the people on the team. These people tend to have a handful, just a couple of engineers working underneath them. And if you look at the structure, this would be a team within the larger teams. For example, if this is a Gmail team or some teams that owns a product, this would be a smaller team that would be responsible for one part of the product. The goal is that the teams should be the size of a family, because it's a lot easier to talk to 4 people if you sit in one room or in an open space together than having to have 20 people on the team and not knowing who's doing what. And this is what it looks like, the environment where we work at. You probably noticed the monitors. When you join Google, you get either one 30-inch monitor or 2 24-inch monitors. I prefer 2 24-inch monitors because they have more real estate than one 30-inch monitor. Some people find monitors laying around and they just grab them if no one's lighting them. So this guy, Greg, he's got 4. Well, he's been there for a while. He probably had many chances to get monitors. And it looks very chaotic, but it really isn't. The goal is that this open space, we call it mega cube because it's really surrounded by cubicle, but it's one ginormous cubicle. It will have 4 or 5 teams in one Linear cube. How do you call, is the clover leaf, the one that has 3 or 4 leaves? So you would put the tables in the shape of a clover leaf, and that would be usually one team, 4 people that are clumped in one little cluster together. You might wonder if it's disturbing to people when other people next to you are having conversation. It is, and that's what you have your headphones for. Just put your headphones on, and you're fine. This is a shameless plug. This is my dog. She's chewing on a beanbag. So yes, we can bring dogs to work. And there's another one in the back. You can't really tell. The Dalmatian. Yeah, you can't really tell. He's begging for some food in the back. So that was the former building we were at. More than a year ago, we moved to a larger building that has taller ceilings, and this is where we sit right now. This is a part of Gmail team. One thing to notice here is these balloons. The balloon means that a new engineer joined and sits right there. And it just allows us to come in and introduce yourself and just make friends and offer help. Every now and then the balloon pops up. We have a lot of people coming in. And there's a lot of intercompany transfers. So everyone's encouraged to stay in each team for at least 18 months, but then they can go to a different team after a year and a half. All right, and if you guys are familiar with what continuous build is, do you know what it is? There is a monitor on the right. Is there a way for me to point? We have stuff. Point, like laser or something. It's okay. So there is a monitor, like a large dashboard on the right that is mostly green and has a little bit red. What it does, it displays the status of the continuous build of a code that compiles the latest version of our code over and over and over. And when it breaks, it turns red. So anyone on the floor can see whether the build is broken. And of course, we have a rotation, so there's always someone who is on duty, who's responsible for keeping these green, so that we don't have broken code. Because if you have broken code base and you try to work in it, you can't compile, right? So this allows us to keep everyone productive. So now that you saw where we sit and what the environment looks like, what is it that we are really trying to do? And I'm going to give you a prize if you give me the right answer. It's going to be... I'm going to throw it at you. I hope I'm going to get you right. So what are we doing? What's our goal?
Information.
Yes. Make it universally accessible and useful. You're good. You're paying attention. You're asleep. Yes. So we're all trying to achieve the same mission that the company is trying to achieve. Here it is. And now how are we doing it? Another prize. Pen. No. Yeah. Or whatever you want. This is a tough one. How do you organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful?
By collecting it first.
By what?
Collecting it in the first place.
That's part of the answer. By creating a great software for our users. Wow. A lot of money. Oh. Do you want to come and get...
No, thanks.
Okay, just come later, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, as any software project, this is the flow of what happens from the idea until the idea is actually implemented in live and useful to our users. So you start with an idea. That would be cool if we could mark important emails in Gmail so that people notice them first, right? That's an idea. That's what the PM would come with. And then you translate it into specific features. PM would translate it into the features. And then you plan them. So PM would be asking engineering manager to do these features. Engineering manager would allocate resources and people to work on this, and they would prioritize what needs to be done in what order. Then the developers start working on it. Once they code it up and unit test it. Our developers write their own unit tests. They send it for code review. Do you guys know what code reviews are?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So another pair of eyes would look at that code and give feedback, demand more tests, ask for refactoring, or if it looks good, would approve it. Once it's approved, then the author of the change can then submit this code into the repository of our code. And once it's in, then it's going to be picked up by release engineers who take the code, they build a binary, they push it on a handful of servers, just a small number of servers, and they tell our testers that happen to be in Hyderabad, India, to test them. So we push it at night, we wake up, and it's already tested. We don't waste time. We work around the clock. And once it's tested and it looks good, then they push it to Canary, which is a larger number of servers. It might affect, let's say, 1% of users. Every team has a different setup. It might be 10% of users. It's less than 100%. It's less than 10% usually. And it stays there for about 2 days. There are people who are watching all kinds of graphs, making sure the latency didn't get worse, making sure there's no exceptions in the logs. And once it looks stable, then they push it fully into 100% production. And that's when it goes live. And what Google's trying to do, we try to shrink this, to be able to do all of this in a lot shorter time. We want to develop fast, and to do this, we need to just develop what really needs to be done. We can't try to please everyone. We need to be really highly focused, and from the company's perspective, they want to get the most bang for their buck, right? They want to maximize their return on investment on the developer time. So, what do you think? What do we do? Do we add resources or do we reduce waste?
Reduce waste.
No.
Who said reduce waste? Well, you get another prize.
Yoo-hoo.
Remember, I owe you 2 prizes. Yes, reduce waste. That's what we do. There are a few things that we don't want to do. Here are some horror stories. United States alone, they waste $60 to $70 billion. I don't know if in Polish billion is the same as in English, but in Czech and Slovak it's miliarda. Do you have miliarda?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so $60, $70 million. That's a lot of money. And this does not even include projects that are delivered late or projects that go over the budget. So obviously every company ends up doing something that will never launch, but we try to minimize that, right? Here's another. There's a list of horror stories. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm going to point out one thing on the list. In 1994, state of California, home sweet home, wasted $44 million on a system for Department of Motor Vehicles, where you would register your car, where you would get your passport and driver's license. So they developed it for $44 million, and I don't know if they never launched it, but it was wasted. Not good. So I'm going to now talk, this is the second part. The talk has 3 parts. This is the second part. I'm going to describe, in general, 3 main methodologies for developing software. Oops. Yeah. And here they are, visual, so you can see what's coming up. What was that? You were like, oh. What, you don't want to see these?
I've seen it on the lecture.
Have you seen these before?
Semester, yeah.
It's a refresher for you. All right, so waterfall. I can ask a question and see if you remember the first time. No? Obviously, it looks like a waterfall. This is really coming from manufacturing industry. When you're making a building or a car, you're not going to make changes to it after it's built, right? So you really have no choice. You have to get all the requirements up front. You cannot change them, or you can only make little tiny tweaks along the way. Then design, implementation, verification, and maintenance. So at first, this was applied to software industry, because that's all people knew. And you can imagine that people spent multiple years developing a product, and once it's developed, turns out no one really wants to use it. right? So hopefully no one uses this, but I heard that some companies still do. The second one that kind of was developed from the previous one is a spiral model. You can think of it as multiple waterfalls in a row, and each waterfall would be one prototype. So you would work on the prototype 0, or 0 based on mathematicians. Prototype 0 would take you 6 or 9 months. Once it's implemented, the customer looks at it, and they give you feedback, and you go back to square one, and make another prototype 1, prototype 2, and then you will be only talking to the customer at the very end of the iteration of the cycle. So this is more flexible, but it's still not as flexible as it can really get. What most companies are trying to do these days is the agile model. And you can think of it as, imagine you're driving a boat, and you're on a boat. You're wondering, what am I talking about? Okay, it will make sense, just listen. You're on a boat, the ocean is all crazy, and then you see an island in the back. If you point the steering wheel at it just once every 6 months, or once every whatever time period, you would be going there in zigzag, right? You're going to really have a lot of miles that you go through. If you are able to continuously point at that island, then you go straight line and you're going to be there faster. So this is the same idea. We are correcting ourselves every single week or 2. The iterations are maximum 2 weeks long. And you talk to customer constantly. So the project manager needs to change their behavior. They need to know how to work with agile teams. So the project manager brings in the customer, or project manager is kind of like a customer to us, would give us feedback constantly. We are able to respond change every week, to change every week or every 2 weeks, which is great. We don't develop prototypes. We work per feature. And we release every week or 2, because every week or 2 we're done with the feature. The teams are self-organized, even though it doesn't look like it. I'm going to talk about it in the next slides. And you saw that the office is open, that encourages collaboration. People can just get their ideas flowing, and everyone knows what's happening. So here are the 3 main types of agile, or flavors of agile. You've heard of extreme programming, right? Mm-hmm. And pairing. Have you heard of promiscuous pairing? Yeah, there's such word. Promiscuous pairing means that you're pairing with a different programmer each time, or each day, or every few hours. And that really allows you to learn from everyone on the team, not just this one buddy that you always pair with. It's really useful. SCRUM is a project management methodology for project managers that work with agile teams. And Kanban, this is a funny one. We don't have any Japanese here, do we? Any secret Japanese? We had one yesterday. And I asked him, what does Kanban mean? Because I was told that it means whiteboard, and he said it means a label. That's kind of the same thing, it's a board. Here's an example of a Kanban card from a Toyota manufacturer. So apparently they have these cards attached to every single part that's in their logistics system. And so you can go to any place in their logistics system, look at the part, look at its card, and see what happened to it, what state it's in now, where it's supposed to go, and by when. So we can apply this to the way we work with tasks, with software tasks. So you can think of tasks as physical items in a similar way. All right. So what do you think Google does from what I just described?
SCRUM.
SCRUM. That's for project managers, right? Mm-hmm.
A mix of them, I guess.
Yeah.
Because
You get a 3rd prize. We do a little bit of everything. Did you attend the practical by any chance?
No, but it makes sense. So.
Okay.
Do you use work in progress limits from Kanban?
Work in progress limits? No, I don't think so. Well,
It's one of the
we
core
can work
concepts,
on-
but
as the goal is to work on as few tasks as possible, because the more tasks you work on, the fewer that you get done.
Yeah, exactly.
And the tasks are so small that you usually work on 2 or 3 at the same time. So we don't really need to limit it.
Okay.
All right. If you go to this thing called google.com and you type in 2 things, the first result will be a page that lists 10 things, not 2 things, 10 things. It's going to be 10 things that Google found to be true, and it's a list of 10 bullet points, and the first one says, if you focus on the user, everything else will follow. And we actually do this even in our software development. What we start with is a user story. It usually comes from a product manager. A product manager comes in, and here's an example from a banking industry. I'm not a banker, but I just wanted to have a generic example. And would say, an ATM user should see their balance. ATM is bankomat. You call it bankomat in Polish? Yeah. Okay. So you go to bankomat, you're a user, you want to see the balance. And they also want a similar feature, but for a bank employee, district manager, wants to see who used this bankomat. And so we start with this user story. It usually is, it has a subject, like who, then what they do, and what they want to see. It's usually a full sentence. And it's important that this sentence has acceptance test, which means it's clear when it's done. It should not be ambiguous. And once we have the user story, then the engineers translate that into 1 or more tasks. So what would be the tasks for this? For the ATM user who wants to see a balance. Just an example task. What would the engineer do to get the ball rolling, to get started with this?
You should connect an ATM to a server in which there is a balance of account.
So they need to first figure out how to talk to the server. Okay. And I'm going to get there in this slide. So the first task would be define some kind of API between the bankomat and the server, how they're going to talk. The second task, these are just example tasks. Obviously, in the real life, you can have like 5 or maybe 10 for this kind of feature, depending on how complicated their code is. And another task would be to implement the code on the server side that would talk to the database, authenticate you, do many other things. I don't know what they do in the banking industry. And then return some kind of number. And then a third thing would be a UI designer would design some kind of nice UI for the bankomat. Nice button that matches all the other buttons in the ATM. And that thing, when you press the button, it will use the API to talk to the server. So this is an example how we would break down a story into tasks. Now I'm going to talk about the different states of the task. So think of a task as one of the Toyota parts. And imagine that it has its own card, the Kanban card. And it goes through these states, right? You start in a state where it's just an idea. Someone wants this to be done. No one committed to it. It's not even clear if anyone will ever do it. But if people come to your desk and they ask for something, you just say sure, and you put it on the list, right? And the list is disorganized. It's just a long list of ideas, feature requests, or even tasks. They don't even need to be in the form of user story or anything. They're just lists of stuff. Once a week, we go over stuff in the icebox, and we decide what we actually want to work on and when. And we put it in a different list, the list that's prioritized. This is the most important list that our team uses. We call it backlog, or some people call it work list or scheduled. And either PM or the tech lead of the team would prioritize the tasks or stories in this list. And this list has both stories and tasks. It's not homogeneous. It can have both. It's extremely important that it's prioritized because you are working from the top, from the most important ones to the bottom. And I hope this looks readable to you. This is a visual difference between icebox and backlog. For those who are like me, extremely visual. Right? Disorganized pile of stuff, and then organized queue of tasks and stories. Once the developer is ready to work on the next task, so you have something in code review, and you have 2 hours until you go home, so you're going to pick up the next task. You always pick it from the top of the backlog. And it changes its state. Its Kanban card will change from in backlog to it's being worked on. Someone's working on it. There's not much I can talk to you about here. It's just someone working on it, programming, testing, sending it for code review. And once that's checked into code repository, it states the Kanban card would change from state current to state done. So these are the main states. Here is a real example of a whiteboard. Oh, it's so dark. Wow. Of a whiteboard. We call this swim lanes. That's why there is an example of a real swimming pool. Because it looks like swim lanes. And each swim lane is a list. It's one of the... You have tasks that are in the same state in the same swim lane. So the leftmost swim lane is backlog. Stuff that's scheduled and prioritized. The one next to it is working on. So the second swim lane, people are actually working on those tasks. And do you see those pictures? That helped. Okay. Do you see photos next to those? There's little pictures. Okay, at the very, very top of the whiteboard, you see a bunch of little pictures. So everyone would have like 4 pictures of themselves. And then when they are ready to work on something, they take a task from the top of the left swim lane, put it to the second swim lane, and take their picture and attach it to it. So no one would need to come to them and ask for the status update. This is all you need to see what's the status, who's working on what, how many tasks are each of these people working on, what state these tasks are at. And these guys they have created another part called in review. There's a lot of stuff in review. They don't like to do code reviews. They just like the code, and they are procrastinating with the code reviews here. And the next swim lane, they again invented the checked in. I guess it just means it's ready for verification. And then in QA, so features that are being tested by people in Hyderabad. And I don't know what's the one on the very right. Maybe pushed.
Don't you use some computer systems for that, or just
yes.
signals?
So if your team is physically in the office, this works better because you see it every day. It's there. You can destroy it. Like you can close a window in the computer screen, right? But that yellow card is there. It has your name on it. You know that you were supposed to work with that. But some teams are distributed. One of my coworkers works from Seattle, and we got these whiteboards, so we are using a software for this. There's many different softwares for this. Can we have more light again? Oh, because you have to go all around. Sorry. This is just a summary of the swim lanes we saw on the previous slide. And now let's go to pop quiz. Who can list them? Who paid attention?
Oh.
What are the most important ones, really? Stuff is in icebox. No one's working on it. It's not even clear it's going to be done. Then it's in backlog, which is prioritized. Then it's in working on. Then it's in
review.
In review, but like in our team, working on means that it's either working on or in review. Until it's checked in, it's working on. It depends if you want to break it down into small sub-states. And then once it's checked in, it's done, right? And then if you really want to wait what happens in Canary, then you might have other states. You want to wait for QA to test it, but not everything does this. You deserve a prize because you answered like a lot. What would you like? Pen? Android stickers? Pins? Frisbee? At the end?
Yeah.
Okay. It's going to be first come, first serve, so you've got to come in fast. So how do these cards ended up on the whiteboard? When do we put them on the whiteboard?
In theory, the product owner should do this, but you don't seem to have product owners, so the manager, I guess.
Right. So product manager would be only creating the backlog and prioritizing it. Or tech lead would be doing that. And then, so tech lead does it, but also people do that sometimes. You might have another bucket for Icebox, and if you have an idea, just put it there. And it happens during these meetings. Here is an example of a weekly calendar of a tech lead. The stand-up is optional. Some teams do this religiously. Some teams think it's completely worthless. I actually belong to the second. Even the pre-planning, I don't do any pre-planning. We don't have any demo. We don't do retrospective. And our planning meeting is 15 minutes long. This is the beauty of lean and agile development. You improve your process to the point when you are not being held back by meetings. So let's talk about the weekly. Go ahead.
Why don't you do a retrospective?
We do retrospectives, but we do only once a month, and I'm going to talk about it. Yeah. The most important meeting is the only meeting we actually have, and it's the weekly iteration planning meeting. When we show up at this meeting, we already have things in the backlog, but we still have to break down the stories into tasks, because backlog might have both types, and we only worry about the top of the backlog because we only plan 1 week ahead. So we would look at the top 10 or so items in the backlog and make sure they are clear, we understand what they mean, and if they are user stories, we break them down into tasks. And we estimate them, and this is the fun part.
How many user stories do you delete per week?
I don't know, 10? Depending on how big they are.
Yeah.
We average about 20 points, but again, every team has different scale. I'm going to get to this on the next slide,
So
actually.
it's 10 per team. 10 per team. 10 tasks per team.
10 tasks per team, but it might be, you might have many smaller tasks or 3 big ones. The backlog, again, I'm saying it for like the 5th time, it's always order by priority, and we estimate as we go. We don't want to estimate the whole backlog because sometimes we remove stuff from the backlog if it's been at the bottom for 3 months, even though it's been in the backlog. And what's interesting, we don't estimate the tasks in terms of days, we estimate them in terms of points. What was the question?
Excuse me, because we are talking about tasks that are broken by you, okay, for smaller ones. But who does preliminary break down something more complex?
Who writes? Okay, so the question is who breaks down the tasks per limit, like who makes the user stories? It should be product manager. Because product manager translates from the ideas of a feature to the actual requirement. What is the requirement? Do this, make that feature, do that feature. And they put it in the form of user stories. And then developers break it into tasks.
Idea size. What is the size?
The size? All right, I'm going to get back to this.
Okay.
So,
Another question. Do you meet your product manager? How often do you meet your product manager?
It depends what team you are in. If you are an internal team, you don't have a product manager. The tech lead would be kind of the product manager. If you are a user-facing team, you might have multiple product managers that are all over you all the time. So it depends what kind of product you're working on. But they are heavily involved, especially if they do SCRUM. So these points. It turns out if you ask someone how many hours it's going to take them, they will say 2 hours. And it will be 6. Or it gets even worse. If it's something larger, they say, oh, it's 2 weeks. It's going to be 8 weeks. The bigger the task, the worse they do when estimating in terms of days. But it turns out if you estimate something in terms of how difficult it is, you do a lot better job. So if you see a task that is medium or easy to do, and you see another task, compared to this one, it's about the same. You know that, oh, they're about the same. You give them both 1 point. Then you see another task that took you like 3 times as much time as this one. You give it 3 points. And it's a lot more accurate than estimating in days. It's also important that you estimate no more than 5 or 8 point tasks. If it gets above 8 points, 8 is already big. Even 5 point tasks are too big. They might be, if something is too difficult, people tend to say it's 5. But it might really be 10. So we break down the tasks into smaller tasks. And I do have an example of cards, how we vote. Actually, they call it planning poker. It's like a ritual. The team meets every week and plays poker. It's not as fun as real poker, but it's useful. So usually one person is the facilitator, and everyone else listens to what facilitator does and follows instructions. So the facilitator would read a task. And then the facilitator would say 1, 2, 3. And at the same time, people lift the card. We all look. And if everyone has the same number, or there would be like 2, 2, 2, 1, we just mark it as 2. If you see 1, 2, 2, 5, what does that mean? What does it indicate? People disagree with size.
1, 6, other people don't.
Yeah. So the real reason why we estimate is not because we want to forecast. We actually end up forecasting, but it's useful for product manager. Product manager knows, oh, these guys do 20 points a week, so that means they can do 5 features in a month. That's good for product manager, but for me as a developer, I do 5 features a month, but okay. This is most important for us to flesh out the requirements and understand what this task is about. So when we are in a situation when you have 1, 2, 2, 5, we don't even start going into some kind of discussion. We just look at the person with the highest number. And this person says, to do this task, you have to make a small database change there and make a stubby API to do this and blah, blah, blah. You just explain what you need to do. Then they stop. Then we look at the person with the smallest number of tasks, the smallest number of points, and they would say, to do this task, you need to do 1 line change in this file. Right? And everyone understands. Oh, okay. Revote. 1, 1, 1, 1. Okay. Right? And then we rewrite the task correctly. So it's clear from the task itself what you have to do. This is extremely important because it's really easy to start working on something that you think you know what it's all about. And then a week later they tell you that you just wasted a week working on something that they didn't really want from you. And this avoids this wasted time. It's really useful. And what else? Oh, it's really interesting to estimate for another reason. It's like collective forecasting in one way, but also it exposes the knowledge gaps. It makes it clear to everyone who knows more about which part. And it's not to blame anyone about not knowing things, but it allows people to know, oh, I better learn about this one, or I should pair with this person on this. It's really useful. And also it exposes skill unevenness, who's able to do something, who's not, who needs to learn it, and personality differences. You can see the pessimists, you can see the optimists, and if you do this ritual every single week, you end up calibrating yourself. So in about a month, after 4 meetings, all of you you start estimating about at the same level. And that's why 1 point in my team is not 1 point in another team. They all have different point structure. So it's like a family. Every family has their own dynamics. And you kind of get them in sync. You synchronize with everyone. So once you are done with the 15-minute meeting, you go back to your desk, you finish whatever you're working on, and then you're ready to pick up the next task, you take it from the top. Even if you don't even if you are not really the best person to work on it, you always pick the top task. If you don't really know how to do this, you are pairing with someone who knows, or you ask them for advice, for a pointer, and make sure to send your code review to that person so they can give you additional feedback during the code review. You shouldn't work on more than 1 or 2 tasks. In reality, people work on 3 or 4. But the goal is to work on 1 or 2. And the transparency. This is why I was saying that you don't really need stand-ups. If you have whiteboard that shows you everything. Who's blocked? Who's working on 5 things? Who's working on 1? Whose changes are in code review? Who's just waiting for code reviews? If a manager comes in and asks for status, you just point at the whiteboard, right? It's there. Just look at the whiteboard. So it allows you to focus on coding and not on meetings and status updates. This is the daily stand-up. I'm listing it here because some people preach it really religiously. In fact, I've done it before in one of the teams I worked at. You would stand up, you would hold something. I worked for a sponge team. That's how they call it. So you would hold a sponge, like a nasty, dirty sponge. And then when you hold it, no one else is allowed to talk. And you would say, yes, today I've done this and that. Today I'm going to do this and that. And I'm being blocked on you. You need to finish your change list because whatever, I depend on that from your change list. When you're done, you give the sponge or talking stick or stuffed animal, whatever it is that you guys are using, to the next person. You're standing because you want this meeting to be short. And when people sit, they tend to sit and chat and drink coffee, and it just drags for hours. So 10, 15 minutes. Many teams do this. This is very popular practice, but again, if you have a really good whiteboard, if you have your system really well designed, you don't need this. And now we're on our last slide. Someone was asking about retrospective. It was you, right? Or who? You. Oh, sorry. I know it was on the left side. Some people do this once a week, really short one. Our team does it once a month, but really we do it once a month. Bad. But this retrospective is so important because at this meeting, well, I think that our team doesn't need to do it every month because we are in one room and we actually make improvements as we go. We don't wait until retrospective. But if you have a team that's in multiple different offices or they want to discuss it in one dedicated meeting, they would meet once a month. And you would give them 3 post-it notes, blank ones, and a pen. And on one they write 2 or 3 things about what they think went really well since the last retrospective. What they think didn't really go so well. And what are their specific suggestions on how to improve? Because anyone can complain, right? Just give me a suggestion. Tell me how to fix it, right? So we write these 3 different lists, and then all of us discuss things that went well. What we like the meetings got shorter, we don't have to stand up, we can come to work at 11:30 a.m., things like that. What we don't like, people tend to complain about, code reviews taking too long, or tasks should be smaller, or I don't know, any kind of things that you want to improve in how the team functions. And then the last one are what we can do to improve it. Thanks to this, our team was able to reduce our planning meetings from 1 hour to 15, 20 minutes. So it's extremely useful. And again, whatever I just described to you, it's not what the whole Google does. It's not even what the whole Gmail does. It's what my team does. And it's not what you're supposed to be doing. In fact, it probably wouldn't work for your team. You start with something that you think makes sense, and then everybody you'll see what works, what doesn't, and you just tweak it. And the retrospectives allow you to do that.
You
so
have to often tweak your practices.
Yes, yeah.
Because you're going to get various people.
Mm-hmm. So we had, for example, recently we made a change to the way things we were doing. We used to have stuff in the icebox, and at the meeting we would be moving stuff from icebox to backlog and deciding where it goes in terms of priorities. But now we're doing it before the meeting, so the meeting is shorter.
Questions? Who becomes responsible for the action points?
Some of them are for everyone. Some of them will be, I don't know, make sure that you will do code review the same day when you receive a code review request. Another ones might be for specific people. We made another change when our team started doing Agile. Since I was a tech lead, I was the one who facilitated the meetings. And I felt like they just sat there like potatoes, for an hour, and like they were passive. And so I suggested that it would be nice if everyone took the ownership of the meeting, and we started rotating. So once a month, you would be responsible for running the meeting. And I noticed a difference. People are really, they are forced to understand the tasks. They are forced to look at the backlog before the meeting, and it gives them a sense of ownership of the project. It really works well, and I don't have to do all the things. Yeah, it's a family. We don't have that authoritative relationship between tech leads. We're all friends. In fact, we might be on the same level. At some point, I was on a lower level than some people that were on my team. Now we're on the same level, but it's like a family. And it's really important who you're on a team with. If you're with people who are always pessimistic, you just need to kind of gently offer them to switch to a different team, or just, encourage them to participate in this. Okay, we're at the end of our presentation, and you can ask anything you want. And I might or might not answer. If I don't know the answer, I'll make something up.
Your teams consist mostly or in 100% of software developers?
Yeah, engineering teams are mostly developers, but we also have testers on our team.
But I have a different question. What about graphics?
Graphics? UI people? User interface designers?
I mean, people who draw or create graphics in some programs.
So, for example, it depends on what product you're working on. In Gmail, or let's say in Google+, you do have user interface. They have a lot of user interface designers that are not coding. They create mock-ups, and they create buttons and the look and feel of it. And they work closely with the developers that create the client-side JavaScript, for example. So yeah, every team should have representation from every role that needs to be part of developing the product.
How frequently you talk to product managers to verify you achieve goals or not?
Yeah, I mean, since you're talking to product manager on a daily basis, they see every week what's your progress, and they're like the customer to you. And every week they tell you, oh, make this change, remove that, add that. So they are not surprised at the end. They know where it was heading for what.
Is this kind of meeting?
No, they can just come over. They see what stories are on how we broke down the tasks. They can always look at the whiteboard. Or they can see the demo. Every time a binary is pushed, which is like maybe every couple of days or every week, they see it and see if it looks the way they want.
Okay, so we need to make this product another role to check continuously.
Yeah, they are heavily involved. They're always involved. Okay, whoever asks questions will get one of these.
What about interactions among teams? Do you feel the need of exchanging information among your teams?
Yeah,
with other
cross-pollination. Yeah. So information sharing, that's very important. We don't want to work in silos. We depend on other teams heavily because we use our own infrastructure most of the time. Obviously, we use programming languages like Java, but tools, compilers, all of these things that we need to use, IDE plugins, they're all developed in-house. So we usually talk to them when we complain about stuff not working or when we have feature requests from them to make our life easier as developers. And so we are customers to them. And if they're agile, they would even be encouraging us to tell them, give them the feedback more often. So we are always communicating with other teams.
But it's not formal. You don't invite your customers or the members of other teams to retrospective or daily meetings?
No, the retrospectives and team meetings are just for the team. Even managers don't go to these. We don't want managers there. In fact, it's bad when manager is there. It's not encouraged. Because managers would then try to assert what they want the team to do. But the team needs to create their own destiny. They create their own path, the way they want to work. That's great. It gives the power to the developers. But the other teams, I know it's usually the tech leads that communicate with tech leads. So I know the tech leads of teams that we depend on and on the teams that depend on us. And if something's broken, if the continuous build is broken, but not because of us, but because of their infrastructure, I don't even, why wait and make an appointment with them? I just chat them right away and say, what's going on? We're down, or what's the ETA for fix? Or if it's something that's more of a feature request, we would meet with them ahead of time because they need to plan. If it's a large feature request, they need to plan. They will do it for us if it's going to be useful for everyone at Google, not just for us. So sometimes we need to create our own solution for our problems, but sometimes they are willing to do it for us if other teams will benefit from it. If it's a feature that will be useful for multiple developer teams at Google.
So you need to contact product manager?
So internal teams don't have product managers, they just have tech leads. Product managers are mostly for teams that are outside user-facing. It gets more complicated and slower as a result. But the internal teams, they're a lot more agile. They just, they know what they need to work on, because if they don't do things right, they will be hearing from their customers really quickly. And people, they say as it is. They don't sugarcoat it.
What operating systems and IDs do you use usually day to day?
So our team is working a version of Ubuntu, is using a version of Ubuntu, they call it Ubuntu. Ubuntu, right? We support two IDs, the main ones, Eclipse and IntelliJ, but there are people who use VI and people who use Eclipse and anything they want. You're not forced to do any specific thing. Obviously, if you join a team that's writing code in Java, you're not going to start writing it in Go or some other, or Haskell or some language like that. But you can use any tools you want to develop it, as long as it's properly tested, it compiles, and for code reviews, we have in-house code reviewing tools, so we use that.
Do you use your own Google tools for internal use, for example, Google Plus in your office?
Yeah, so we do. They call it dog fooding. So the question was if we use our own tools internally. So obviously, engineering infrastructure tools are all internal, and we use them. And even products that are customer-facing, we have our own version of these products, usually running the newest binary, usually more buggy than the one that's in production. And they call it dog fooding. They eat your own dog food. I don't know why it's called that way. But that way, we feel the pain, and we force the team to fix the bugs before it goes to customers. So we use Google Buzz. We used Google Buzz. Now we use Google Plus. We use chat, video chat, Hangouts, everything. We're encouraged to do social networking while at work. It's good. There's no firewalls, and they don't block IPs or anything like that. If you want to watch a movie, watch a movie, and then program. No one's really standing above you and saying, "What are you doing?" They only care about what you deliver. Are the tasks being done on the whiteboard? If they are, you can do whatever you want to get them done.
When you work from home, if you get your task and it's going to take 15 weeks, you came later?
Some people work full-time from home, but they have usually very specialized roles. If you work in a team, especially in an agile team, it's encouraged to be there so that you collaborate with people. You can work from home if you're waiting for a guy to repair your fridge, or if you're waiting for delivery, or if you're sick, or anything. But, you don't work on this. There are people who work from home once a week, but you probably shouldn't be doing it more often than that. It depends on your manager. Some managers don't mind. It depends on the team. Some people work alone. They don't want. Some people are really very individualists, and they like to work by themselves. And if the project fits them, they can work by themselves. That's fine. But if you're in an agile team, you probably want to be surrounded by coworkers.
How do you deal with defects?
How do I deal with what?
Defects.
The defects in, bugs in code?
Yeah.
All right, so if you notice a bug, it's not a feature request, it's not a user story, it's a bug. You create a task for it. And put it in a backlog, on the top of the backlog, to get it done as soon as possible. If you use whiteboard, you can use a red card for it, so it's clear that this is a bug, this is taking time away from features, we've got to get this done quickly.
How often do you stay overtime?
How often do I stay overtime? What do you mean overtime? Well, what are the working hours? We don't have working hours. You come when you come, and you leave when you leave. It's advisable to be there when other people are there. So especially if you're tech lead, people come to your desk, and other tech leads might come, or other people on the team might come, your customers to your desk, and they have questions. And if you're not there, probably not good. But there are people who like to come at 2 p.m. and then leave really late night. There are people who come at 7 a.m. and then leave like at 4 or 3. Depends on what your responsibility are. If you have children, if you're a morning person or evening person. I come at 11:30 because I take the 10:40 shuttle from San Francisco, and it goes, it's quite a long ride. But the shuttle has internet. So I can start working on the shuttle. I can do code reviews. It's not that fast. You can do code reviews and emails. For tech lead, especially for management and PM people, working on shuttle is quite doable. If you want to write code in Eclipse, it's probably better to be surrounded by 2 24-inch monitors.
As far as I can see, you have quite similar process of software developing as my team. And I noticed one thing at your presentation about this planning meetings. You do it every week or every month?
The planning meeting, when you estimate the task?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, you do this, depending. If you have 1 week iterations, you do it once a week. If you have 2 week iterations, you do it every 2 weeks.
Yeah, I asked it before because I find it the most difficult part of the whole process and the most important and we always have a problem with it. It's like we are sitting there few hours and talking about these tasks and what is task about? Oh no, it's about that. No, it's more difficult. It's about that and that and that.
You're supposed to say, with the cards, whoever has the largest number would say, to do this task, I have to do A, B, and C. No more discussions. Look at the other person with the lowest number. To do this task, you have to do A.
Yeah,
3 votes. No discussions, because if you start, people love to talk. Some people just love to talk. They have all these ideas, and they just like to have the opportunity to tell it to people.
Yeah, but also it's like if you don't discuss it at the beginning, then it would cause problems.
Well, the tasks that are on the whiteboard or in the backlog, they should already be fairly clear what they are about. So the tech lead or the PM should be probably doing a better job describing what the task is about, and they should be much smaller. It's possible you have large tasks and you're discussing what are the 10 steps you have to do to achieve one task.
So the method for getting rid of these discussions is think about this task by a product manager before the meeting. Or
I think the size of the task. Maybe how long do they take to achieve this task, to actually implement it?
I don't know, 1 to 8 hours.
Okay, so it is a 1 or 2 point task. And you discuss it for how long?
No, because we do these meetings once a month.
You have meetings once a month?
Yes, because we have 3 weeks iteration.
Because you need to plan for 1 month ahead, and there's a lot of tasks, 40 tasks. The meetings can be long.
have usually about 40 tasks to do.
40 tasks.
We develop it for 2 weeks, and then we test it for 1 week. So we have 40
you go into these 2 phases, development phase and testing phase? Or do you continuously
we continuously testing it, of course, but then we do something like testing with users. And
okay. Maybe your team is too big. How many people?
No, it's like 5 people.
5 people? And these 5 people do both the coding and testing with the users?
No. It's we deliver the thing to some group of users, and then we do bug fixing.
Okay.
And if it's something internal, we just deliver it internal, and other people in our company are.
That's the thing. You have a lot of roles in your team.
Well, yeah.
Our engineering team would just develop the feature, and then let the release engineers push it, and then someone else would then ask the users to test it. There will be a different team that would do that, and they would file bugs back to you. So next time you hear about a problem, someone already discovered it. It's not you who discovers it. And then we have much shorter iterations, so they're much faster. The meetings are shorter, and you don't need to think a month ahead because you don't know what you're going to do in 2 weeks. So just plan for 1 week ahead.
Well, yeah, but I think the worst thing is to to understand really well what this task is, what's the matter of the task.
So
it's the most difficult part, because if you know exactly what they want you to do, you just do it.
Well, if you understand your system, if you only work on one component, all the tasks will be within the component, right? Or maybe your tasks, they touch many different parts of infrastructure, and that's why they're so challenging? No,
it's like, it's sometimes it's very complicated because it's connected with financial things. So.
Yeah, I would suggest shrinking the amount of responsibilities that your team does, and then shrinking the size of the iterations. And maybe estimating much smaller tasks.
I got a question too. Do you have an access to the product owner?
Yes.
Somebody who wrote the task?
Well, yes, we have access, of course.
Daily? And during the planning meeting?
Yes, but during development, it's very bad to change your way of thinking. And after developing quite a big task, divided into smaller tasks, you after like 3 days, it's like in the middle of iteration, and then you find out that this task was about something really different.
Exactly. That's why you should work with the PM and the PM should be very closely involved with you and check with you every now and then, very frequently, about whether you're doing the right thing. And if you have shorter iterations, it will allow you to refocus, to correct your focus every week, not just once a month. And it will remove a lot of frustration and waste. One more question?
How does communication within the team work when you said that people may come whatever hours they want?
Communication? Teams sit around the same area, so they...
Yes, but if they come to work at different hours, then...
Well, it's usually by 3 hours off. If someone's there at 9, another person comes at noon, and they're still working like 5 hours together. It's not really a problem. And then sometimes people go home early and they're online to answer questions, or they work on their laptop at home. How are you doing on time, by Oh, you're good. Yeah.
What features exactly does your team is responsible for engineering?
See, that's the thing I cannot talk about. Because we cannot talk about what's coming up and what specifically we're working on.
And how about your spare time? Do you have some percentage of your time for your project?
Oh, yeah, the 20% time?
Yeah.
Did you all hear about 20% time? Okay. So I think this is it right now. But it's not really 20%. It's more like 2%. Because tech leads are usually a lot more busier than just Swiss. They need to both be writing code and they have these additional apps they need to learn.
And what about these projects? Do they go live or not?
What projects?
These 20%.
Oh, Gmail started as 20% project. And people started using it, so they staffed it with more people. And I think it's still live. So the question is if we have competition between teams. In what sense? Why would we compete? For resources? No. Well, monitors. No, you don't steal people's monitors from their desks. You only take a monitor when no one sits around it. We are not really. It's a competitive environment in a way, but we are not stabbing each other in the back. We are helping one another. People have different levels of expertise. Everyone's good at something else. And so you're better off just working with the people that you think you can learn from. That's what we're trying to do. Right? One last question.
You said that you have no working hours when someone asks about overtime. Do you have much free time for your private life, something like that? Or because I heard the rumor that in Google the general environment is great, but people work there so many hours, and yes, and they have no time for anything else.
It depends. It really depends on what team you are. If you are under some deadline, if you're launching a product and you happen to have a lot of bugs in it and you need to meet the deadline, then you would obviously work more to achieve it. But this is not a long-term thing. It's not like you're expected to work overtime constantly. It happens every now and then, but not very. Depends what team you're on, really. There are teams that mostly maintain things. There are teams that write new stuff and they actually have constant deadlines. There's this team of SREs. SREs, Site Reliability Manager. They carry pagers, and they are the ones who need to deal with outages. So they might be having dinner with their family if their pager goes off. They need to go immediately to their computer and start fixing things. But they know that this is their responsibility, that's their job. But no one is really, I don't think they're really working us too much. At least, you don't allow it, you just do your best, it needs to be done, and go home. There are people who like to hang out with Googles. I mean, I hang out with Googles too, but there's many things you can do to stay there all day. You can go to gym, you can have a sit-down meal every time you eat. Sometimes I just take food with me to my desk, and then I can go home early. There are clubs, you can play bridge with people, you can go bowling, we have bowling alley now. We have photography club, volleyball club, fishing club, everything you can think of. There's all kinds of nationalities, they have their own clubs, dancing, Bollywood dancing, anything you're into, you can probably find people who want to do it. Juggling club, people who juggle. So you can spend a lot of time there, for sure. It's really like a world, like a bubble, anyway.
Do you know and can say what is Google working on in Krakow? Is it the same stuff or only Polish related?
I know they have search team, and they're working on another stuff that I don't think you could talk about. But I know they have quite a few developers here. It's a engineering office, and another large engineering office in Zurich, and I think in Munich. So yeah, they have like 3 floors here. I just can't remember.
How long does the chef take?
Internship?
Yeah, internship.
It's 3 months, I think. It's during the summer. Yeah.
What is next?
Oh, it's really good actually to do an internship because it's a lot easier to get hired as an intern than to get hired as a full-time employee. And you only have 2 phone screens. You don't even need to even show up for in-person interview. And then you're there for 3 months. Obviously you get paid, you learn a lot, and after you leave you go back to school. But then if you ever want to come back, there are people who can write a recommendation, a good review for you. So you would have to go through interviews, but they can help you to complete your packet to make you look like good and good forward. So it allows you to put your foot in the door in a way. Lots of people did internships at Google before.
Do you have beer or alcohol nutrition?
If you have alcoholic beverages, Yeah, we have a bar in Gmail. It happens. I always end up in a team that's like drinks a lot. it's just certain people. So we do have a bar, and I think on Fridays sometimes there was wine Wednesday, beer Thursday, I think. No, Thirsty Thursday. And every Friday we have TGIF. Thanks God it's Friday. And the TGIF is actually a company meeting where we meet with the co-founders and a CEO, and we can ask the questions. And there's food and beer and wine there. So you can get, yeah. I have beer. I'm ashamed to admit that I have 2 cases of beer under my desk right now. I don't drink beer. It's just a leftover from a party. I don't know what to do with it. I was already asking people to take it away. Any more questions about alcohol and other drugs? No? Are we all done? Ready to go home? Okay, whoever asked the most questions should come first to get your stickers and tattoos and pens. And there's one more. Just one more frisbee. You were asking other questions. Did you already get a frisbee?
Me?
No?
No, not yet.
Okay. Should I try?
Yeah, please.